Look at this, huh? Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mr. Brad Chester. Below me, in his place, is Mr. Sean Dice with Rice. I didn't sound right at all. I got to figure that out. I got to say that so much better next time. So it is all of the things, some of the stuff. Don't listen to yourself. That is always a problem, Sean. God, can't take you anywhere, my friend.
That's exactly right.
We've got some stuff to talk about. I'm very excited today because we may or may not have put up my Nova list. So I love everything about it. I'm really psyched up. We're going to be talking about Orks today, dealing with the meta, how to deal with the tops, who are the tops, what should you be planning on when you get into a tournament. You're going to a tournament, you know that, whoosh, let's go to the meta watch. Hey, if you're going to a tournament, you're probably going to play some Eldar. You want to know why? Because they now make up 15% of the people that are coming to tournaments, and they're winning, and that's MetaWatch articles lie, because they're actually winning at 72% if you take out the mirrors. So you got to have a plan. Your plan doesn't have to be I crush Eldar. There's a reason why they're doing that. That's a very OP army, but we have to have a plan to win every time we go. Doesn't always have to be the best plan. You have to have a plan. You have to have something that you're planning on doing against all these armies. Do we have a plan against Eldari, Genestealer Cult, Imperial Knights, Custodes? And then we've got the people not in the red. Thousand Suns, Chaos Demons, Tyranids, Deathwatch kind of being propped up by team tournament stuff, Necrons, and then you've got, we're still in the good zone, which means they're also probably not going to be touched, which means this video is so good for so long because it's going to be relevant. Because I don't think Orcs are going to be touched in the next September. I could be wrong. I can't believe it.
I don't think so. There's no way that they're touching Orcs. So if you're watching this later, however many months later, this is still good info. We're not getting an index or a codex for a while, which means this index is going to be live for a while. And these strategies are going, and units will hold true for a good amount of time.
100% on that. And I believe it on that. It's just, I want to state every time we do this, you're not trying to chase the meta, you're being aware of the meta. And those are two very, very different things. Knowing that your army can take on these things is different than trying to tech into something specific. I will say this every time we do one of these: never tech your army so badly to one thing and make your army 5% better against whatever the top dog is and 20% worse against everything else in the meta. I see it time and time again. So I already talked about what the top dogs are right now. It's Eldar, GSC, Custodes, Knights, and every single army that's up there has consistent high damage output with rerolls, the ability to put out damage outside of different phases, and they all have resilience. And when we say resilience, it's either high toughness, great saves, combination of both, or mobility. I don't know, say for instance, Eldar being able to move out of phase and just get out of the way. And couple that with Fire and Fade, that goes into the old mobility section. What you have to do when you're looking at taking out a top army is looking at, what are my strengths? What are their weaknesses? For instance, GSC and Eldar. Those armies, great armies, but they're fairly fragile. You can put a beating on them. You can take away key pieces. And especially with the Eldar, once they start to lose those key pieces, you can start really dominating the board. You can start putting up those points. Again, it's not just about killing those. Sometimes the weakness is you're faster than them. You know, you can put up better scores than them. Because in the end of the day, when I put in my score in BCP, it doesn't say how many models did you kill of your opponent. It says, what did I score? What did my opponent score? If I put in a bigger number, no one goes, hey, you should have killed more things. Sometimes you're going to kill some stuff. Don't worry. Uh-oh. KR goes, I need to take notes to the House Orc Army. You're going to have them. They're good units.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about, how do we deal with it? we've got our patented 5-step process, which is preparation, identify strengths and weaknesses, make a plan, which is literally my biggest thing. Preparation and planning are the more you prep, the more consistent you're going to be, the more confident you're going to be. And basically, then we go into practice, and we'll talk about how to practice. And then practicing and making adjustments go hand in hand. You should constantly be tweaking. You shouldn't be renovating. Again, when you look at your army, it has to have a core concept of what you're trying to do, and then you solve for X. I'll say this every time we do this. You can't solve for X, Y, and Z. You got to solve for just X. Too many things moving, too many moving parts are going to make it so you're never going to get exactly what you want. And that's a big deal. Let's talk about the WOG.
Ah, yeah, the Orks, baby.
Pretty excited about this. Sean, give me some prep work here.
All right, so the prep work you need to know when playing Orks. This is the Grumpin and the Thumpin. These are the units that get it done. First off, you got to take Mazrag. Why? Why am I saying that? Mazrag is a ridiculously powerful unit.
Whoa. Pause. You don't need to even go there. He's an orc riding a dinosaur. Continue.
There is that. There is that. You know what? That's basically all we need to say. Yeah, he does some other things, but it is an orc riding a dinosaur. So that's what we're here for. You're taking Mazrag. Mazrag, fantastic unit. Then we get in more of the nitty gritty. We got to smash a squig with Headwop as kill choppa, and we got some squigs to go with him. This unit is silly tough, silly powerful, just for what it is. Also, it's more orcs riding dinosaurs. You gotta take them. And that's what you're gonna love about this list and everything that goes into it. It is the more squigs you have, the better your list is going to start looking.
The power of the dinosaur.
And then to go with our dinosaurs, we're going to bring pirates. You want to bring Badrak and the Flash Gits. Badrak, if you haven't played against it by now, he gives the unit full rerolls to hit, and when they already have exploding sixes, and they can take an ammo runt for once a game lethal hits too, you're going to disrespect the Flash Gits exactly once, and then you are never ever going to let that unit touch anything important ever again. Conveniently, it also has great melee too, so you're going to be hit by that exactly once and then never again, because it's not as simple as just tying that unit up. Then you have some of the more niche combos. You have like the Gargantuan Squigoth plus Arda's Nails. You know what's great? T13 with -1 to be wounded. That also has Knights wounding on 6s, by the way. So this thing just walks up the board, and those Knights that also can't hurt you, you then have like flat 12 damage attacks that you can throw into them. So if you're more of a, I want to play just a bunch of dinosaurs and a massive Squigoth, that's completely viable. Like, you can do that. Then we have, some of the anti-infantry tech. We have Squig Buggies plus a mech. Why is this unit great? Well, the mech gives the Squig Buggy +1 to hit. The Squig Buggy already gets +1 to hit against infantry, and it already ignores cover. So basically all those indirect rules, you just kind of ignore them, and then you start picking up their trash units with it.
With D6 plus 6 shots. There's so many.
It's just so silly. And then we have more of your like bread and butter units. We have a Beast Boss plus a Beast Boys. If you saw my Orc faction video, I really broke down. This unit can hit medium toughness targets or just guys that are hanging out on a point and just absolutely demolish them. The combo is you get reroll hits versus vehicles and monsters, and then the Beast Boss gives the whole unit +1 to hit. And he himself is no slouch. He gets a plethora of options.
Devastating wounds on the charge.
Yes.
With a guy that has, anti-vehicle 4, anti-monster 4.
Yeah, so he's just going to be able to take down anything that's just a medium target sitting on a point, and even against big things like Knights, being able to just wound on 4s and deal mortals, like, you're going to put a hurt on some Armigers. You're going to put a hurt on some Knights that are, been whittled down by the Flash Gits.
We're going to go into it, but like, it is a big deal that a lot of the Orc units have anti-keywords. Anti-keywords are nothing to sleep on. They are a big, big deal. I don't know, the knob on Smash a Squig with the Headwampa Kill Chappa, getting his anti down to 3s when he the turn of the Wog.
Yep. And then we have some of the other kind of throwaway units. We have a truck plus Burnaboys. Burnaboys get to reroll all wounds when they're targeting something on an objective. When you're just throwing down a bunch of flamer shots onto a trash unit, Burnas are extremely cheap, and the truck gives them a little bit of durability and the movement to just get there and throw down their damage. And finally, we have a cute unit. It got a little bit accidentally nerfed, but Zodguard was 20 Gretchen. You make the mistake on this unit exactly once when you don't realize they just go 12 inches in the wall, and suddenly you've got all these bodies that are just standing there. And you're like, I really don't want to put a lot of shooting into these Gretchen, but there's 20 of them, and I have to get rid of them to get to the Zodgrod, because the Zodgrod is giving them +1 to hit and +1 to wound.
You're gonna get beat up by Gretchen. You didn't even know it.
Yeah, nobody ever expects the Gretchen, and they're coming in hot.
The Gretchen Inquisition is coming at you.
Yeah. So, and then what kind of orc lists are taking to score secondary points? Brad, why don't you hit us with that first couple there?
You know what? Since I just went to 3 Storm Boys, and we'll see my list. I love the Shock Chop Shragstra. He's been in and out of my list. I lied because I did shoot the gun once at ATC. And I had to look it up because I wasn't really sure what he had. But I love him for zooming around the board, doing things. War bikes, Squigog riders, trucks. The thing is that I think I did more actions, more cleanses, more raising things with my trucks than I did anything else in my army, to be honest with you. Independent characters, independent characters. What are you talking about, Brad? That's no additions. Characters, Weird Boy. Holding the objectives, love holding them with rocket trucks, Gretchen, Mega Knobs, the only people in the entire book that have a real save. I don't know why they're the only guys that decided to put on armor, but it's cool. And my list, we really considered an aggro board control list. I'm trying to hold the board, score as many points as possible, deny as many points as possible. And again, we're going to talk about this. There's a ton of time when all I'm trying to do is stall the game, move block the game, score so many points. It's so huge. But when we get down to it, and this is a big thing, Sean's so much better about this than I am, you have to find out. I'm good about terrain. Find out what terrain you're playing on, because it's going to make a difference for if you're brigging, your mechanized, your trucks, your Squigog boys, anything that's just not walking through walls that are more than 2 inches tall. Also, rulings. How are they ruling things? How are they ruling the jump? Can I do things on turn 1? Can I, what are they ruling? Specifics for your army. It's very, very important that you know these things before you get to the tournament and not in the tournament. I don't want to find out that my rule, I have this great combo that I set up in my Orks, and I find out on turn 4, playing Sean, that it doesn't actually work that way in this particular tournament, and all of a sudden I go, oh cool, I was going to score 14, 15 points with this, and now I'm not going to do any of that. So you need to ask those questions beforehand. It's not scamming, it's not doing anything. It's just be aware. The more you know, G.I. Joe. We're doing a little PSA after school announcement there. But the more you know is just going to help you. That's why it's preparation. It's part of your preparation is knowing what you're going to be into.
That's exactly right. And, some knowing, is my event going to let me run through walls and, use the WTC ruling of being inside a wall? Is that allowed? That's a huge part of how orcs are going to be played. You need to know where you can actually get to on the board. And I did want to address that little asterisk by the Weird Boy. The combo here, if you're not familiar, is you give him a super cyborg body, and then you let him teleport around to do secondaries. That is a niche little 70-point unit that you can throw in an orc list, and everyone has a Weird Boy. Come on. Everybody's got this one little annoying unit that can go in there. The downside would be he can sometimes hurt himself, but with super cyborg body, he's got a feel no pain to just kind of ignore that. So you're going to get a lot of value out of taking a unit like that.
Also, I hate having to put somebody in the corner, getting my 2 points for everybody within 9. I don't want to put a real unit there. It'd be nice to put a Weird Boy there.
And then have him teleport away to do something else later.
Exactly. That's the biggest thing, is that you can get people. That's why, for instance, the Shocked Up Dragster, anybody that can move around the board. You don't want to do an action, a secondary, or whatever, and be out of the game. You know what I mean? For multiple turns. That's why it's so nice to have these units that can have teleport, just lots of movement to get back into doing whatever they wanted to do. Get back on the objective. Get back, do another one. Be cleansed after that. If you can get a unit to score you multiple secondaries over the game, that's fantastic. It's huge value. So it's a big deal on that. So like, let's talk about identifying your strengths and weaknesses. Let's start with the strengths, Sean. Let's start with the strength. You know what? I'm going to do strengths. You're going to do weaknesses, because I
figured you might.
I like to be good cop and the fun parent. Strengths, offense. If you like to roll dice, you came to the right house, baby, because orcs are all about it. You get to roll all of the attacks, all of the shots. It's fantastic. And if you're like me and you're the garbage man, you're going to be super happy about the fact that you've got cheap units for days. Just for days. I have everything. You can score secondaries like a madman. You've got mobility. You've got fast units. With the WOG, you have a huge threat range. With strats, your infantry can actually be crazy time, giving yourself pluses to move, giving enhancements that are plus to move, and then, of course, advance and charge with the WOG. Tons of ways that orcs are strong. Probably the best army in the game. Wait a second. They've got a couple weaknesses.
Yeah. I gotta rain on the parade a little bit. So the first thing is, if you bring 2-up saves against orcs, the orcs suddenly go, uh-oh, I am really going to struggle to hurt that, because the majority of the time, our melee attacks and shooting are going to be low AP. And then to compile on top of that, we actually need to move around the board to score, which means Overwatch is pretty great against us, because if anybody can double Overwatch, our units are kind of tough, but not really. And that's where we get into, you have a weak defense outside of the wall. We are sitting at 4-up and 5-up saves, plus some feel no pains, but assuming normal dice, you're going to lose a lot of your units when somebody just says, I'm just going to Overwatch you with flamers. I'll kill like half your guys. And, that's going to lead into a little package of orcs struggle against very specific things. But for the most part, those strengths are looking pretty good. And if your opponent isn't running, 2-up saves with a lot of Overwatch, then you're going to have a great time playing orcs in anything.
Sorry, I was too busy getting a GIF out. And the thing is that those are real weaknesses, and you have to know them and you have to identify them, because you can play around them, but you can't be someone you're not with the orc army. You have to understand that you have shit saves. You know what I mean? So you're going to get guys picked up. You can't just sit on something and hope for the best and just accept and try to weather the storm. That is not the orc army. So it's a big deal on that. So
yeah, we're gonna go into that further as we get into how do we make our plan? What does our game plan look like?
I love that I didn't change the slide, but I did now. Making a plan. You know what I just said? Lead into strengths or mitigate the weaknesses? Yep, that's what I was talking about, but just decided that clicking my mouse would be way too hard.
So yeah, we've got definitely a strong lean into your strengths here. Like, they don't do that very well, but what they do very well is get in there and get crumpin', which is why we're all playing orcs, right? I mean, come on, that's what we're here to be doing. So our game plan generally, I'm gonna let Brad take away the Eldar one, because he is a fantastic Eldar player. And he's also played a lot of orcs recently against Eldar.
It is a big deal, because when you're playing against the Eldar, you have to push them away, kill their trash. One of the first and foremost thing when you're playing Eldar, kill their trash. You have to take away their ability to score, Because yes, they've got some big scary units. They've got the Wraith Knight, they've got Fire Prisms, and all of a sudden you go, yeah, I took away the Shadow Specters, I took away the Warp Spiders, I took away Bikes, I took away the Viper, and all of a sudden they go, am I going to raise a teleport homer with a Wraith Knight? Make them make shitty choices, outscore them. There's a reason they're the top army, but you have to figure out what their weaknesses are. Put them in the corner. They don't want to be touched by your squigs, your beast boss. Oh yeah, anti-vehicle 3 and 4 is a real thing, especially if it's doing straight mortals on people. Their army is literally made up of vehicles and monsters. What keyword do you have? Anti-vehicle and anti-monster. Touch their stuff, you will be able to do damage to their things. But the bigger thing is that you need to win that early board control and steal away their secondary ability. You can score so many points and take their ability to score points away from them. This is a totally playable game. Again, great army, don't get me wrong, but you have to look at it. Don't people tap out too quick, and that's one of my pet peeves. So one of the reasons I was so excited to do this with Sean is to talk about that. That plan is so big against them. Push out, take away their ability to score. And again, don't be afraid that you're losing things. You're going to lose things. That army has mad damage, but you're taking away, you're scoring more points. You're scoring points, you're taking away their ability to score. You're putting them in the corner. We do put baby in the corner when the baby's Eldar, and we keep them there. You keep them there, you don't let them out. Eventually they're going to kill most of your army, and as long as you're putting up a big score at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.
That's exactly right. And they have some of the best units to do it against Eldar, because you just have these random fill-up pains. And when suddenly one guy lives, one knob on Smash the Squig with Head Wap as Kill Choppa is enough to take down, the Warp Spiders. Like they aren't, we talked about this in the weakness section. They're fragile. Once you get in there, they start losing units, and then they have to make a choice,
And they don't have the critical mass at that point in time. Also makes a good point. I didn't go over it enough. You're screening like a madman. You're move blocking. You're getting in the way. You're limiting their board. You're telling people to play in a certain area. I had a recent game, and I've played Eldar with it, but you can just push people, especially if people put too much in reserve. You look for those mistakes. Everybody makes mistake, by the way. Everyone. Every game, everybody did something wrong. Figure that out. Take advantage of that. You have that speed. Did my opponent deploy too defensively? Well, I might early wog and just put them in the corner. Because if they're not scoring any points for 3 turns, it doesn't matter if they smash my army. If Sean and I are playing and he's got 10 points at the end of 3 and I've got 70, well, I'm probably going to still win that game no matter what else happens. So
that's a good point that you made there is I don't believe that Orks are an army that your goal is to get to 100 points. Your goal is to set up a situation where your opponent can't possibly score more points than you. And this is, a key thing you have to identify when playing a lot of different armies. But Orks in particular, when you set up the situation and sometimes your opponent flubs, yeah, you're going to get 100. But most of the time, you're just going to set up a situation where you lose your army and you're going to win 70 to 50.
Yeah.
You're going to win, 80 to 57.
We'll give you an ATC game when I play the Orks on that. 1,000 Suns player usually puts his Terminators in reserve, but against me, he should have put them on the board. I realized that. I pushed him really hard. He effectively tabled my army by the end of it, but it didn't matter because he didn't score any primary or secondary for 3 turns. And then we got into it's not even mathematically possible for him to score enough points anymore to win that game. He's putting Orks in a wood chipper, but it didn't matter at that point in time because I had taken the board. You need enough trash. Again, as I say, I think I may have said once or twice, pre-measure. See how far you have to screen. You have so many you should have so many small units all over the place. You should really be able to cover the board for multiple turns.
That's exactly right. And just getting a little bit back to it, we have the ability that Brad has hinted at and told you over and over again. Anti-monster, anti-vehicle means that when we get into the Imperial Knights matchup, if one beast boss or Mazrog makes it into a knight, you're taking that knight down. It is absolutely not going to be there the next turn, and that makes knights have to play completely in the corner. We saw a game on War Games Live that was the Salt Lake City GT, I think, and the knight player had played against Orks several times and knew this, and he was terrified that he didn't even move off his backboard edge for 2 or 3 turns. And it
Such
looks
a big deal.
odd.
But
It
but if
looks
they
odd,
get
but it's
touched,
right.
well, let's just talk about Mazrog. Mazrog against knights has damage 5 and damage 6 attacks.
Yeah, and they auto wound and they deal mortals. Like, this is not something you want to touch at all if you're a Knights player.
It's such a big deal on that. The thing, got Lyle coming in with a $5 super chat. What should my plan be if I think I can never beat the other guy in the first, but you can always beat the other guy in the first place? I refuse to acknowledge that, Lyle. The biggest thing on that is it's not the person, it's your game plan. I'm making a plan to score the maximum amount that I'm trying to score. And then I have to ask myself the question of what can I realistically deny from my opponent? Am I going to take enough space away that he can't do a teleport homer in my zone? He can't get behind enemy lines because I can screen out enough. Are those things that I can stop? I'm not going to try to stop things that don't do anything. Extending battle lines. He's going to take his home objective and one objective? Whatever. Real things to stop are, can I put my opponent on a 3 on cleanse instead of a 5? That's a big deal, because if I can put up a 90 something and my opponent can only put up high 80s, I can still win that game. There's tons of matchups that you are unbelievably unfavored, but just score your points and focus on that. Don't worry about the fact that there's going to be games where you're getting cleaned up and you're still going to win that game. I had multiple ATC games where I either tied the game or I won the game, where my army was just getting crushed. And that's a big deal. It's just score. And never take your foot off the scoring gas. A lot of times you're just going to be hiding. You're going to figure out what you're scoring. It doesn't matter if you're getting crushed. Play the game. Never just go for it. Going for it says, I give up, but I'd like to roll some dice while I give up. Plan. Always figure out what's the way that I can score a maximum amount of points and try to deny my opponent some points. All right.
Yeah, and that's part of being clever is something that Orks can do very well. And part of your mentality when playing, don't ever say, oh, I can't win. Say, how do I get points? How do I win from here? And Orks, oddly enough, have all these little tiny units where you can make some really hilarious things happen. So don't go in with that mentality of, I cannot win. You can win. You need to figure out how to do it, and you need to be able to have the plan to do it. So getting more back into it, GSE specifically, we mentioned this a little bit. You're going to screen GSE out, and then you're going to touch everything. You have the speed and mobility to do it, and you have all of the trash to have them not even be on the board.
And it's not even about killing them. When we say touch, yes, some of our units are going to pick some of their units up, but you know who's one of the MVPs in that army? Trucks against GSC. I'm going to drive trucks. I'm going to touch units. I'm going to get in the way. I'm going to move block them. And now with the fact that they have to be wholly within 3 when they bring their units back, they have to respect you and respect your aggression, because you can get within those ambush tokens. And if you push those ambush tokens back, it takes them a full another round to actually get back into the fray. So it's a big deal that you're being, I like to call it passive aggressive. You're not just pushing your whole army in, but you're making you respect that. And you're you're scoring your points, pushing them back.
That's exactly right. And, Austin makes another good point. This is why Brad hinted at that he's moved to 3 units of Storm Boys, is Storm Boys provide you so much mission play and so much tactical onboard play that, things like rapid ingressing them just so they can run over and take a blip.
It's
huge. That's a fantastic
You
play.
can literally ruin somebody if he leaves you an opening. And the thing is you don't have the big bit of footprint. I'm talking 5-man units of Storm Boys. You slam them in, all of a sudden you advance, and then you charge, because they don't have to do it just on the walk. You know what I mean? So they run up, and all of a sudden they get within ambush tokens, and you're just like, pick up, pick up, pick up, pick up. Oh, cool. Did I kill anything? I don't care. I move that ambush token. So that's just a big deal on that. So more the key, we're in the key units on this. The unit that should be in all of your orc lists is Bad Rock plus Flash Kits. The volume of shots, 3, it's not 3. You're going to be shooting at the closest unit. 4 shots per guy plus Bad Rock shots. You can pop the ammo runt for lethal hits. You've got full rerolls if you're out. If not, you're sitting inside your truck, probably hitting on 4s because a mech boy said the truck shoots better. With explosions, that unit puts out a dumb amount of firepower at 2 damage apiece. That's a huge thing. It's so good.
And that leads us into a good point to mention. These are the key units in the list. I know we didn't go over this in the other video, but you do not have to take all of these units, but we are strongly suggesting that you take certain units that are just, one, style-wise. I mean, you're playing a bunch of pirates. Come on, who doesn't love playing a ton of pirates? And rules-wise, everything is just going well for this unit. It looks awesome. It's fun to put on the table, and it's a great unit. So when we mention these things, part of your game plan is deciding how you want to play and which key units you want to kind of make your list around. So obviously, if you just took all of these units and put them in a list, it would be okay. But part of making your plan is knowing what do you want these key units to do. So don't forget to really think about that when you're like, oh, I really want to take 6 trucks. What do I want my trucks to be doing? How do I want them? Who is going in the trucks? And make those decisions based around that rather than, oh, well, they just told me these units are good and I'm just going to play them.
I'm also excited to actually read my rules and get some CP back from the Gretchen.
Yeah, Brad really struggled to ever gain a CP from his Gretchen, not because he couldn't roll a 4-up, but because he never rolled.
Because I didn't bother to roll. Because sometimes I'm an idiot. So. But I love Gretchen. I love them for the price point. I think that they're a fantastic unit for what they are. And the thing is that we said this in the Demon, know what your units are supposed to be. Like, for instance, my Storm Boys. And we'll go into this. My Storm Boys will kill the occasional stray, but my Storm Boys are there to take points, deny points, pick up things like ambush tokens. It's a big deal on that. To know what you are, score points first, kill second, always. Go into my next one, man. I'm so on board with it. The 6-man Squig Hog unit with the knob on Smash a Squig. That thing is nasty. Again, anti-keywords, plus the fact that they're T7. They are mounted, so they effectively have no anti-keywords against them. And you've got the option for the -1 to wound strat for them. That is a really tough unit for your opponent to take out. Even if they end up killing him, they typically just spend their whole turn trying to dig those guys out, which feels fantastic. They've got a 4-up save with a 5-up feel no pain. And they're just good. Again, mounted, so they work much, much better on things like GW terrain than they do against player place, depending on what pieces of terrain they have. Because GW options right now, you can actually have tons of places where you can run right over the corners because they have the 2-inch terrain.
Another thing to keep in mind is having a 4-up save against damage 0 and always having cover means you are basically a tougher Space Marine.
Yep.
You do get your cover save against AP 0 with this unit, which means little trash shots are not just going to pick them up. And that's very important for an orc unit that really needs to get in there and start doing its thing to get value.
Huge, because you actually have things like the Desolation Squads just kind of bounce off these guys. It's a big deal, especially at -1. They're wounding you on 6s. So. Yeah.
All right, so moving on, how do we actually put these units to use? Well, you have to practice with them.
And I'm going to start again with being time efficient because this is my favorite way to practice. I play very few just straight games, like whole games all the time. I want to communicate with my practice partner. If I'm playing with Sean right now, I'm going to talk about, I'm not just trying to win a practice game. I'm trying to figure out what are the best moves all the time. When I call a walk, is it too early? Is it too late? Where should I be? Should I be more aggressive, more passive? You have to talk with your opponent completely on both sides too. You're trying to make each other better players. So it's important not to just go, oh, I deployed like an idiot, and then just play the game out. Fix your deployment, and then deploy, go again. You made a horrible decision right away. Reset from wherever you made that horrible decision. Learn from your mistakes and get immediate value out of that. So it's important to know what you could do, what would make my game better. And a lot of people just don't have enough time to play a million games out. So make your practice the most efficient it can possibly be.
And something that you can make into a fun little game from that Pedro, Reyes, and I often do is, just say, oh, I deployed wrong. All right, you win game one, and we just keep track of how many times we've won the game because we made a horrible misplay, and you just see at the end like, oh, okay, I made this many mistakes, you made this many mistakes. That was good to know, and we're never going to make these mistakes again because we got to just correct them, and we're not going to do that. Basically, we're going to have efficient time management while we're doing it.
100% on that. It's a big deal on that because you can start figuring out, do I need to project threat? Do I need to push out? One of the biggest things with Orks, and I want to talk about this, is you always have to make that pros, cons, your cost efficiency sheet. Is it worthwhile for me to go kind of not all in, but just can I put my opponent in the corner? Is that a strategy I can do? Or do I need to play a little more cagey and just sit around? Because there's a time and place for max aggression, and there's a time and place to just frustrate your opponent and do absolutely nothing. And that's going to depend on the mission and the board a lot of times. So you have to look at it and go, hey, if I just keep my opponent in the corner, were you playing board corner deployment? My opponent deployed very defensively, all in a ball. Well, yeah, I'm going to go very, very aggressively because I just need to hold them there for a couple turns. I don't even need to do damage. I just need to put them there. Is my opponent kind of playing a setting up? He wants to set up. He's pushing out. Cool. I'm going to play very, very cagey. I'm going to make the game slow down. So there's a lot of times when you're doing one of the other, and you have to see which one's going to be better in that scenario. Practice. It comes to practice a lot of times versus certain armies where sometimes you're hitting hard. You're getting people before they can get to places. You're playing custodes. I think it probably the Orcs' worst matchups. There's going to be missions where you're just going to try to go everywhere they're not. And there's going to be missions where you go first and go, can I get to them before they touch the objectives? I might not win all these fights, but can I just keep them somewhere? They're not super fast. Also, once they get to the objectives, fighting first and full rerolls, pretty much the bane of Squighog boys. So you really have to figure out what's my play in these. And that comes from talking through, playing the game, picking up, doing it again. I'm here. Because certain things are such a big deal. I'll use the Squighog boys versus Custodes again. If Sean's playing some Custodes and I hit him not on the objective, all of a sudden I'm -1 to wound. He's strength 7, so he's wounding me on a 5 and no rerolls. He didn't fight first. I got to pick up some guys before he went. He doesn't have that critical mass of attacks. So you have to look at, can I get there? Is this a thing? Can I get there? Can we just sit in combat for a while? I would love to have that happen. Where he's not getting that. They have very few units. So you have to look at again, how am I scoring points? How am I denying points? How am I setting up for the next turns?
That's exactly right. So if we had 3 key things to tell you about how to practice as Orcs, the most important is resource management. You need to know when to go in, but also how to go in. How am I going to effectively use every one of my units? Because Orcs have a ton of units. How do I get the most value out of each of them? And how do I make it so that, I actually have units to do the things I need to do?
We're going to talk about this because I hemmed and hawed about 200 points of my army with about 47 iterations for a long time. And that comes with, again, I knew the army's core concept for me, and then I had points I kept trying to solve for X. And that's a big thing. Let's talk about the making adjustments, because We're going long as usual because I never shut up. I'm going to give it to you after this, but I want to go into the biggest thing, which is don't force yourself into the list. We're going to say this every time because it's such a big thing. Get familiar with what you're comfortable with, what you think is important units. For instance, not that many people are running certain things that I'm running in Orks. I like them. Excuse me. I can't be told what. Don't be told what the best list is. Whatever anybody just won with, don't just try to pick that up. Maybe they don't play at all like you want to play. Maybe you want to play all shooting orcs. Maybe you like to play speed freaks, and they're playing a grinder list of infantry. You know, it's a big deal on that.
Yeah, and part of that is knowing your style of play. You know, if you want to be, you know, the most aggressive player possible, you can do that at Orcs. You just need to do it smartly. And if you are not the most aggressive player possible, maybe you look at more of a shooting orc list where, you know, you're being slightly aggressive, but also you're using your small scoring units to get the job done without having to run, you know, headlong straight at them. So that leads us into how might people be struggling with orcs? The first problem is I'm spent. My army is gone on turn 2. How do we address that? First off, you need to be cunning and then brutal.
Oh, love it. It's a big deal in that I see so many people where I try to be aggressive. And it's the thing is sometimes you're going to sacrifice units to save the rest of your units. I played several Death Watch at ATC, for instance. And I took my trucks and I pushed them up because they can teleport every turn and they get angles. And I wanted to cut angles off from where I was hiding in the middle and pre-measure. If they can go here, they can't see these guys. Be very, very cautious. Like, passive aggressive is what I call it. But measure out where you can go, where you can't be seen. You can't take away all the shots, but you can take away some of the shots. Let's go to Lion real quick with the super chat.
Super chat.
He's rocking it out. You guys are spending a lot of time talking about scoring points. When do we talk about laying waste to your enemies and hearing the lamentations of their women? You know what? We're going to talk about that in just a moment. That might be the best thing said today. Do I have the Conan meme ready to go? I don't know if I do. Not in this particular setup. I usually have it ready. Conan, what is good in life? But
yeah, so there is definitely an opportunity to hear the lamentations of their women. That is the brutal part of it. You absolutely are going to get there with orcs, but doing it smartly, doing it with some cunning is definitely what you need to be doing. And that's how we're going to avoid.
And you'll get to be more brutal if you have more cunning.
Exactly.
Because if you have more stuff to hit them with, you're going to kill more things. And that's a big deal on that. I mean, that sounds, yeah, I know, Brad, but like, you can't just push all this stuff out because they will pick up your pieces, and you don't want to be limping into their army where you don't have the critical mass of attacks that you needed.
That's exactly right. And you know, we really encourage you to, yes, think about what you're doing, but there is a point, and this goes with, are you comfortable being aggressive? There is a point where you need to be like, all my units are doing this. They're all going in. I am going to make them afraid of all this wah energy on the table. That is definitely a point of playing orcs. If